Hello, good morning. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to the weekly astrology forecast. We are coming up on our new moon. It's going to be 9 degrees and 3 minutes in Gemini, happening on the 30th of May, 2022, at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, thank you for being here and taking the time to check out Catalyst Energies and this astrology report. We do the weekly report here Friday mornings, 10 a.m. Eastern, live broadcast on YouTube, and then the replay is uploaded to BitChute, to Rumble, to Odyssey. And we give ourselves some insight to what to expect through the weekend astrologically, and then in the week following. So we'll be together again on Monday, same time, 10 a.m. Eastern, for the Starseed Ministry, where we go into much more an intuitive message to kind of set the tone for the week. If in fact Monday is the beginning of your week. I worked in the service industry for a very long time, so I understand that these types of designations are not applicable to everyone, and soon they're not going to be applicable to anyone. I just feel like the time is going to change so much that, what day is it? Does it really even matter? What's important is going to be, where is the moon right now? And even that seems to be up for debate. So special shout out to the Starseed Fellowship. We had a great fellowship gathering last night on Zoom. Some pretty intense and deep conversation. We definitely had a debrief of this prior eclipse, and we're still talking about it, even though we're about to come into this new moon period. But that's the nature of the eclipse, is that the distortion that is caused by the shadowing of either the earth upon the full moon, or the fact that the moon is occulting or blocking the sun at the eclipse. These cycles that normally would play out in a shorter amount of time through a lunation are stretching out, and in some ways creating kind of like a time portal or a wormhole. And so our next eclipse season is going to start October into November, also along the same basic areas of the nodal axis, because that's what makes an eclipse, right? The nodal axis of the moon. So we debriefed about that, got into some really intense stories, people sharing their experiences, and certainly the Cazimi, the Mercury Cazimi that was last weekend as well, how that factored into it. And now we're in our balsamic moon phase. We're going to be winding up this lunar cycle and truly the nature of this eclipse season. And as we come into this period where things are being distilled down, when you think of balsamic, you're like, oh, balsamic vinegar. At least that's what I think of, right? And surely there are other people that make other connections to that word, because you are talking about a concentration or a distillation in some ways, down to the very essence. And in a balsamic moon, we are getting darker and darker and returning back in many ways to the lunar cycle that is wrapping up. And so we get down to the essence of it. So this is a great time in a lot of ways to really go within, find that peace, find that stillness, that silence within you, your feels, your emotional landscape, as we wrap up this cycle and really truly prepare ourselves to take a nosedive in some ways. So the Catalyst Classroom, it's going to be broadcast next week. This is a subscriber tier through Subscribestar. You can check that out in the description box below. But I'm going to be presenting material about the new moon in relation to the Hyades starseeds, in relation to the star Aldebaran, the fixed star Aldebaran, which is where this new moon is in conjunction with, at least longitudinally. I'll even explain what that's all about, and get into the archetypes, the symbolisms, the ancient mythology around all of these cosmological and astronomical things, as well as the starseed story as well, and just layer them together in order to really get a full sense of this tapestry that is our spiritual experience in this human material earth school. So that's something that you can check out. If you're not on my email list, it's a good time to get on it. You can do that right from the website, and that lets you know when I'm making offerings like this, when I'm going to upload special material, if I'm going to give free offering to any of the subscription content as a sale or promotion. So the email list is, 1, 2, maybe 3 emails a month at max, but it's meant to keep you in the loop. Of course, Telegram, we have a pretty lively chat going on there. So, with all of that promotional, publicity, logistical stuff out of the way, let's get into the essence of today's report. So let's, first of all, we're going to do this. And how are people feeling? I know for me personally, I do feel just incredibly, deeply exhausted, and not necessarily in a negative way at all. There was a profound release at probably multiple levels at the eclipse for me emotionally. I do have a moon in Scorpio already in my natal chart. So those themes that were coming up were going through this really cathartic, very powerful release. And then I sustained an incredible sunburn that is still, deeply healing. The worst of it is over. And I think this is this overlap that many of us are experiencing more and more and more, that we are embodying the spiritual and energetic and even symbolic experiences now, to the point where it's so much. Those things are converging as well, because that is truly the essence of spiritual or energetic alchemy or transmutation, is bringing the polarity within ourselves, which is the spiritual, the essence, the soul coming into a material experience and being seemingly separate from the source of, from where we came. So we do... It's important at this moment, during this moon, to allow these cycles, the eclipse cycle, whatever is still residual. It hasn't fully, I feel like that it's so many deep layers that we really want to give it the space, so that when we make an unequivocal commitment to something, whatever it is, even if we don't have any indication if we're going to succeed or fail in this process, at the very least, we've given ourselves the space to let everything come forward that really wants to be released. And so, again, these physical experiences or these seemingly mundane experiences that don't seem like they're these massive spiritual awakenings, but the reality is that's where it's happening, in our very material existence. And when we get to that point, this is when humanity actually wakes up and ascends, whatever that means to you, is in this process. So the more, yay, Emily, thank you for being here live. I'm so glad that you're here. I appreciate that. I know that, we really all need, hi, Megan. Yay, you made it live too. I do feel like that we all do need to give ourselves a space. So what I was saying here is that the worst of the burn all over my body is over, but I can see the deep layers that are still badly burned and damaged that over time are going to be released. And so you have to support that process. So for me, I'm putting castor oil all over my skin that's burnt, because that is, a primary means to heal the skin. There's a lot of medicinal properties to castor oil, but I bought it for a different reason like 3 weeks ago. And then I discover this is amazing for what I'm going through, actually, the burn part. So also trusting that you may not know exactly why you're doing something, but you have to do it. And rather than getting caught up in the interference of having to know why, being able to commit to a process is going to be very important. Because if we are waiting for all of the elements to come together so that we have an analytical, remember, Mercury is in retrograde and it's in Taurus. It's actually crossing Algol and the Pleiades right now. So there is this deep review that we're still in, to please allow it to happen. And I'm speaking to myself as well. It's very easy to get caught up in the, okay, let's take the nosedive. And remember, a new moon is not necessarily anything more than planting a seed, right? It is setting an intention for growth along the lunar cycle. And so keep an eye out. If you're not subscribed already to these channels, you might want to, because I'm going to be uploading the forecast for Geminis for this new moon. So every new and full moon, I put up a forecast for that sign's astrology for that lunation. So that's going to be coming soon too, and that'll give you a good idea, even if you're not a Gemini, the basic themes moving through the month. And of course, we'll cover that on the Catalyst Classroom too, to really get a sense here of what we're working with. So we're coming out of the eclipse cycle. I would like to share a couple things here. The space weather. So this is certainly an exercise in understanding the world and how we are not separate from it, and understanding the science, cosmology, space weather, all of these things, and how they energetically impact us, because it's magnetic and it's solar, right? We're talking about our sun and its own changes and how that is impacting us in our experience of being here. So I like to focus on these things. I have a very limited background, but still an education in the basic sciences, chemistry, biology, and astrophysics, mostly so I could be a better healer and astrologer, strangely enough. Which turned out to actually be the right course of action. Here again, you're balancing or blending these polarities, seemingly. So the first thing I want to show, this is just the eye candy from Astronomy Picture of the Day. I used it in the thumbnail for this video and this broadcast. So the eclipse moon is right here, as you can see, and there was a surprise meteor actually that was coming through the frame when this photographer took the shot. So like I said, Astronomy Picture of the Day, apod.nasa.gov. This is the Milky Way central disk, which, we're now, as a solar system, in the midst of the disk itself, instead of like out necessarily fully out in the boonies. And so there is more density here. There are more particles. There's more plasma. There's more energy and gravity and things going on. When you see dark, this is just an aside, but I just want to share with you, when you see dark spaces in things like astronomy, the Hubble telescope, right, or this person taking a telescopic photo, when you see darkness, it's not space. It's so dense with the particles and the matter, the interstellar dust, that light can't get through it. Just keep that in mind. Because that is, you can apply that to any aspect of polarity of light and dark that you want to, right? It's not there's a lack of light. It's so dense. It is so dense that light can't get through, except you can see this little star that's right here. Anyway, looking at the Schumann resonance for today, you can see that it's been pretty mellow for the most part for the last 2 days, and then started to get stronger. And here we are today, early, this morning, late last night, and continuing. It's now getting louder. Somebody, I believe it was Emily actually, had mentioned last night in our fellowship gathering, our Starseed fellowship gathering, about being able to now start hearing an energetic pulse or a rhythm when people are speaking, or in other types of interactions. Maybe in the chat she would want to expand on it. There's no pressure. The idea here is that the first thing that I thought of when she mentioned that was just like the heart. She said it was like a heartbeat, a rhythm, and that's what the Schumann has been exhibiting, in my opinion, that's what it is. It's the field of magnetism released from the heartbeat of the planet, just like our hearts as an electrical pump are going to release a magnetic field, just like any electrical component is going to release a magnetic field. So you can see that the heartbeat is steady, and there's a consistent rhythm of amplification of the Schumann, and the magnetosphere being relatively calm because we're not getting bombarded right now. So, but I think that might change. Who knows? I've said that before, and it's turned out not to be the case. It's a very interesting experience. So this is our sun right now. This looks like a flare, doesn't it? Right around the outside here, because it was. And so these sunspots or magnetic filaments had, exploded, and we're probably going to get a glancing blow, right? It's not facing us, but it'll kind of wrap around the interplanetary magnetic field and come at us. But there's also these coronal holes that have been turning in facing us. And when you have these holes, then you have something called a coronal hole stream. And then that's where plasma flows faster. It's more dense with particles, and it's like creating a tube that it has a much more direct flow at us. And there is a correlation that is with seismic activity with these coronal holes facing us. And the reason, and I want to show you, and I actually posted this on Telegram. So that's something that I already drew attention to, but look at this. Now, those coronal holes are about to slide out of view, so we're about to get the bombardment of the solar wind, and it's already kind of been happening, but look at this, 6.4, 6.2, 6.2. This is all in the last day, and even today, 5.2 in the Solomon Islands. This is all in the Pacific end of the Ring of Fire, right? Which is, if you look at this, I mean, the continent of Lemuria looks like it could fit right in here. And this is the location, truly, as far as all of the intuitives that have ever written about Atlantis, Lemuria, anybody, any of the mythology, or hopefully soon archaeology, and the ancient stories of the peoples who feel that they have come from there, which is, the native Hawaiians to be really direct, but a lot of the indigenous people of especially the Americas, but I'm sure you could make that case for the Aborigine people on the Australian continent as well. Anyway, these are big earthquakes, right? And some of them have been on land. There was a 7.2 in Peru just the other day, which is the one I pointed out on social media. So you can see that there are big upheavals, right? The has an impact on the crust of the planet and the plates and how they move around and how they impact each other. So that's just something, if you're into that, worth tracking, because we're inseparable from the planet, which is our home, right? It is a living being that is our home. And so any growing life form within the mother in some ways have not getting to us when it flares, which is quite amazing. And then you can see that there's an uptick though, right? The solar wind temperature is just upticked. The speed has gone up. This is the coronal hole stream. Even the density has increased, and the magnetosphere, the stability of it is starting to be impacted. These two top lines, often when you see it go back, forth, and you start to see this go dip down below the zero line, you know that there's more impact. So it is coming, right? And it's just a matter of timing. But it does seem, again, I can't stress this enough, that the Schumann resonance is a consistent rhythm now of amplification, 40, 50, 60, and on the 5th of May, when we had Uranus and the Sun in conjunction, this was a very sustained amplification. It was loud, and it stayed loud for a hot minute. So very interesting. These things are inseparable now, right? They are becoming, and that's part of the convergence of timelines, in my opinion, at least, is that those things become inseparable. And so there's no room for the density anymore when the spirit is piercing through. So, and light might not be able to go through that dense matter out in space, right? But that's based on light in this dimension, right? In this dimension of reality. So start thinking about, what does light do outside of that? What about time? What about space? We know those things have different physics engines. I feel like if it's like a video game term, right? When you get outside of 3D. So it's worth thinking about that as well. So, but light is coming, and plasma coming from our sun. So this is having an impact on our material biological reality. So, I think that's all I have to share in terms of the space weather. So I want to check in with the chat here, because it's starting to pop off a little bit. Emily says my ear, for those of you who are on YouTube and get to see this chat, I'm going to dictate for you your benefit here. So my ear vibrates differently for certain individuals, like I'm hearing your unique vibration and heartbeat, right? Now imagine if this is how we all started communicating with each other, right? Listening and doing it. I feel like that this is what telepathy actually means. I was hearing Denise's vibration last night. Yes, when we were in the fellowship gathering, even on Zoom. That was one of the most fascinating comments in the fellowship. I almost wanted to hear more, maybe next time. Too bad I missed y'all. Yesterday was moving day. Megan, it's okay because you have access to you have access to the replay, and we can always do impromptu gatherings too if people want to. Barbara says, I've had weird ear issues my whole life, so I want to compare notes. You know, speaking of ear issues, my spouse is... he didn't even speak until he was 4 years old because they thought he was mute or something, or he had a learning disability. And it's just because his ears were so plugged up that he couldn't hear anything. It was like living underwater for the first 4 years of his life. So he was, in some ways, the other senses got a lot sharper for him, which is really interesting because he's a supremely talented, naturally gifted musician. Absolutely. And so not to be able to even hear anything for the first 4 years of your life and then to come out that way is, I don't know, that's a testament to something. So some say there are ear chakras, so we need to get into that. Yeah, I feel like there is. I mean, you know that in acupuncture, of course, I mean, there are a lot of meridian points all over the ear, so that's not surprising to me at all. And Emily says that her ear issue, it's not even issue, her ability to hear subtle vibration specifically started after a big awakening for me just over 4 years ago. Oh, cool. That's cool. Yeah. And there are certain, those types of awakenings, really powerful healings. I found that Reiki attunements, wow, they'll stretch things like that, and new things come online really easily. So thank you for sharing. And I do feel like that this is where it's going, the natural technology that is embedded in our very, the essence of being here is in physical form, as a spirit, as a soul, and light travels as a particle and as a wave function. That was kind of the breakthrough when it came to, the beginning of understanding quantum mechanics. So, and the starseeds that are really tuned into that in particular, in terms of really getting it and being able to either communicate that way or teach it, are the Arcturians, right? They have it on lockdown. They are ninth density beings. So they have gone through the process of discovering it, using it, everything all the way up to this ninth density, and they are truly mentors in this realm. So if you know you're an Arcturian starseed, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. You tend to communicate through telepathy or sacred geometry, and you're really interested in the mechanics of vibration and balance and harmony. Arcturian starseeds too tend to be very into certain vocations that have to do with sustainable building and living, interior design and architecture, feng shui, but also like the intentional community thing, which is something that actually came up also last night in our fellowship gathering. So without further ado, my friends, let's get into the astrology of the new moon and where we're going, at least in the week following. So let's see here. I'm going to move this over here. And after I'm done here, I will be working on and recording the Gemini forecast for this whole new moon. Because June is got some exciting things. Of course, we have our solstice that's going to be in June, the sun coming into 0 degrees Cancer, right? The maximum amount of sunlight, right? The Earth's tilt is towards the sun at the solstice for the northern hemisphere and away. So I'm actually going to talk a lot about that, the celestial mechanics, in the Catalyst classroom as well, because it helps to understand where these fixed stars are and the precession of the equinoxes, all of that type of kind of astronomy and, like I said, the celestial mechanics, so that we understand the connection between the mythology, the symbols, the archetypes, the pattern of meaning, and the actual cycles that we're experiencing in the material. So here's today, our 27th of May, and our moon is coming into Taurus. And I, for one, am a big fan of a moon in Taurus, because my Taurus house cusp is my nadir, or my IC, your fourth house cusp, which is right here on the astrology chart. My mouse decided to die. Okay, there it is. So every year when the sun gets to this point in the northern hemisphere, what it truly signals is that this is the maximum amount of light, and we'll be moving, into the contraction phase for that half of the year. And then, of course, the southern hemisphere is going through a different experience. So we're going to have our solstice, and like I said, moon coming into my fourth house in Taurus. I'm a big fan, personally. And because I really find emotional security, a sense of real inner power, character, and loyalty and faithfulness, where I truly belong, is very much directly connected to the Pleiades, for instance. So this is how you use your starseed markings in your charts to get an idea of how the current astrology has or will potentially impact you, how you can use these archetypal references to understand your own journey at another level, multidimensional level, because that's where we're all going, is making the transition. So it's, multidimensionally. So to be able to experience your own journey that way is definitely very helpful. So the moon, though, in lead up to this ingress into Taurus, and the moon is exalted in Taurus. It is happy in Taurus. It loves to nestle into the medium of our growth, into material comfort and security, and a sense of groundedness and sensuality, right? This is a place the moon wants to be. So in the meantime, though, the moon is making a connection to Venus, who is in conjunction with Andromeda Galaxy, so another starseed activation. So if you have Andromeda Galaxy starseed traits, a pretty good indication is if you have anything in conjunction with 25, 26, 27, 28 degrees of Aries, that's a starseed activation or starseed marking for Andromeda Galaxy. It's our sister galaxy. So the moon is making this connection to Venus, these two feminine attributes. One, the more sensual, material feeling in our senses experience, and that comes through relationships, projects, material things, and that we value, that is worth something to us, that feels good, right? That's beautiful, because that's a sense too. All of the senses being gratified in some way, and that's not a negative thing. That's just an experience of being here. So when you smell, the lilac bush is blooming right now, all right? So I get a beautiful scent of that. Or, having your living space to be comfortable and to be balanced, because Venus also rules Libra, so this aesthetic balance too. So these two coming together at the last degrees of Aries, right, is just like, okay, this is, in particular, this is being in attunement to the cosmic order, right? When you come into these very last degrees of Aries before you come into Taurus, which Venus is doing this week, coming home to Taurus, to her kingdom. The Empress returns, right? So in the meantime, before this happens, there's the moon meeting Venus, right? And so there is a juxtaposition or even just an alignment with our emotional feels and our sensual physical feels through these two feminine principles meeting at these last degrees of Aries. So Andromeda Galaxy starseeds, this is truly when you find, when you're in full alignment with yourself and the universe and the cosmos, you are truly free. And freedom, independence, liberty, those are the MO of the Andromedan Galaxy starseeds. They are oftentimes on the front end of social revolution, because it is in the experience of being free at any given moment to be oneself is where they find themselves. Now, if you know your Andromeda Galaxy Starseed, you also know that like time is an issue here, and that's not even relevant. And so that's kind of interesting when you're talking about Venus in Taurus, because the nature of cycles, not so much like a linear time, but cycles and the process of growth and decay is very much embedded in Taurus as an experience. And so there's a lot of optimism and potency and stuff at this juncture point of the moon and Venus at Andromeda, but they're both going to then come into Taurus, into the medium of the growth. Now, the challenge here, as you can see, very obvious with this red bold line up to Pluto retrograde, the agent and representative of this last lunar eclipse in Scorpio, now retrograde is the square to these things. And the square with Pluto in retrograde, of course, is now the destruction of the establishment, of the society, of the government, of the economy, whatever Capricorn word you want to attach to where Pluto is. It's now reverberating within us, right? It's retrograde. It's now being turned inward and going much deeper into what has already been pulled up and out. And so now it's like real excavation, really getting down into the nitty-gritty of these establishments, these institutions, and transformation is the end goal here of Pluto, right? From death comes the energy for rebirth. Now, the square here is, I think, ultimately, can we keep our sense of value, self-worth, our relationships, our projects, our resources, and how we identify the worth of our own autonomous and sovereign nature, our freedom, honestly. And what that feels like in our fields, what it feels like in the world around us. Are we in attunement to the cosmic song, the music of the spheres? I think the square will really bring that up to the surface, because it's one thing to be in alignment with this aspect that is very much still about the potential creative life force within you, while the world is falling apart around you, right? And within you at the same time. This square has really already established, where there's conflict, the cross purposes of this. And I think this is actually a great thing. And as challenging as it is for some people, and depending on your situations, not everybody is in a position where they feel grounded. In fact, they're going through probably some of the most horrific experiences they can imagine right now. So this is still testing each of us, though, in that way. So this has already been the case. And then can you take that vibration or that cosmic attunement, despite this, into the medium of growth, which is Taurus? So let's look at some of the more specific. Remember, Mercury's in retrograde. Mars is now in Aries. That's the other thing. Jupiter and Mars are going to come into a conjunction here, right coming up to this new moon in Gemini. And these two together, in Aries, no less. This is bold. This is action. This is an enterprise that has action all up in it, right? Jupiter gives the word, and Mars is going to act on it in Aries, which again is about the self-actualization, about the potency to be and to create within. So they often are way more productive in an opposition to each other, because they can kind of balance each other out. So, but the saving grace, I feel like, of this conjunction, which I believe it's over the weekend leading up to the new moon. I think it is on the 29th. As we go through, we'll see exactly. It's going to be 3 to 4 degrees Aries. The potential of success out of this very intense coming together of the warrior and the leader, right, is or the meaning, right? Jupiter is the representative of just like, this is what it's all for. They're coming together in a degree of Aries, the 4th degree, 3 to 4 degrees. The Sabian symbol is two lovers together on a secluded, they're strolling down a trail on a secluded trail, right? That there's no one else around. It's just the two of them in a communication with interaction with each other, but nothing else is influencing their work with each other. Now, it doesn't mean it's a closed loop. You're still in a dynamic relationship with the world around you, right? At this point, it's, the seed is interacting, with the outside world via having a separation, but the processes are all going on within, right? There are enzymes and there are catalyzing events that are happening within the individual, within the sense of self, within the creative potential. So when these two come together, you can really see how, if utilized appropriately, we can really take this bold, self-starting, enterprising, action-oriented superhero, Mars and Aries, Jupiter and Aries energy, and not so much turn it inward, but, give ourselves the opportunity to put that work within ourselves, right? How we are repolarizing within ourselves in order to eventually come back out into the world. So this could I don't want to say it could go badly. That's not really what it is. But I could see also this is a good opportunity for a stand down and kind of reorient oneself towards what it is that we are creating. And this is part of committing to the process with this new moon. So I feel like this conjunction with Mars and Jupiter over here in Aries right before this happens, through the weekend, is going to give us a chance, not necessarily to really establish that rhythm within ourselves with a lot of energy and resources. Whatever resources, it depends on where Jupiter is in your house, where Aries is for you. So that's going to be happening this weekend. So let's see here. The moon moves into Taurus today at the very same time, actually, which I think is really remarkable. You're going to find that the moon moves into Taurus at that last right here, and Venus will be pretty much almost exactly square, like I talked about earlier, that square with Pluto retrograde. So there is the square with Pluto retrograde with Venus directly. This is, again, it's going to challenge our sense of value and worth within ourselves, our alignment to the cosmic rhythm itself, through all of the various Venus-oriented experiences, which are, again, relationships and how they feel to us, things that have value and worth materially or asset-wise in our lives, the projects that require actual resources from us, and a sense of, freedom to really experience this. Again, it's challenged just as the moon is coming into Taurus, which is such a beautiful moment of like a pure mountain stream just trickling down, like completely uncontaminated, no influences whatsoever, just absolutely itself in its full natural form. I think this is going to really, I think that moment probably was a moment where we could allow ourselves to just in our feels just be, while the physical material manifestation of this square presented itself. Maybe it came out in your dreams, right? This is, like I said, very early this morning or late last night. So the moon is then moving through Taurus throughout the day. And, the only real thing that seems to be coming up today is actually Saturn is going to be in a trine with Lilith, which is in the last degrees of Gemini. This is where the next full moon is going to be. It's going to be in Sagittarius, 23 to 24 degrees Sagittarius. So paying attention to where Lilith is right now, I feel like is really helpful to get a sense of what is deeply embedded that wants to come out at at a primal level almost. Let me make sure I'm in the right place. You can see it that it's starting to get bolder and more pronounced, but I want to make it exact so you can see it. Let's see here. That's not going to work. There we go. You can see a lot of other things happening too. This is later this evening on the 27th. The Black Moon Lilith moving direct right now. What is Lilith? It's the apogee of the moon's orbit. It's the point that's furthest away from the planet Earth in the moon's orbit. So it's all the way out there, far away from us, but still very, very relevant. And is 25 degrees, 25 to 26 degrees of Gemini. I mean, this is Orion territory, Orion Starseed territory. This is really about, stripping everything down to its base essential elements. There's something really important here that we can plug into, because Saturn is going to station retrograde in June. During this next lunar cycle, Saturn's going to station retrograde in Aquarius. And so while it's still direct and basically providing all of the capacity, equipment, and authority in a lot of ways to test the battery, so to speak. Does the battery have enough moisture in order to function, right? Do you have enough, what is the quality of you as a battery? What is the quality of you within society that operates as a battery? And when we're talking about Aquarius, we're really talking about the larger social structure here. And the resonance of it, the electrical conductivity of it. Is there enough moisture in this battery? And unrelenting. Saturn is unrelenting. And so I think that there is a survival mechanism that might be very useful here right now in terms of this air trine between Saturn and Lilith that is allowing us to strip everything down to identify the real archetypalization or essential elements of the polarization. So knowing where this is in your chart is going to show you what area of life. So for me, this is my fifth house in terms of where Lilith is in late Gemini, for instance. So in terms of my own voice, my own creative expression, my own sense of joy and passion and optimism and fun, right? That's the fifth house, and how one truly expresses themselves, getting down to the basics in some ways, while Saturn is sitting in my first house still, and will for a while still, in terms of what is the identity and the subjective experience and the personality, and is the subjective experience of I am, able to maintain the charge, right? Is there enough? And perhaps there is something deeply embedded in this, my own heart, that really needs to get stripped down bare to the essential nature, which is going to be a more relevant conversation come the new moon or full moon, right? When the sun is here. So again, you can start to utilize these connections here to get a sense of and be on the front, leading edge of it, on the front line of it, being a conscious co-creator of this process. So what else is happening on the 27th? What we're going to find here moving into the 28th, really, which is what we're looking at, is the moon in Taurus, and there's going to be a conjunction with Uranus in Taurus. The moon's then going to conjunct her own north node, and Venus is going to enter Taurus. You also see that Mercury is about to come into another trine with Pluto, so they're both retrograde. And now, again, perspective. This is mature perspective. This is taking into account both sides of something in order to truly understand it. So again, this balsamic moon phase leading up to this Aldebaran-based new moon, right? One of the royal fixed stars. It's associated with Archangel Michael, right? There's no, this is the nosedive, where you make a commitment and commit to follow through with it, regardless of success or failure. So we really do want to make sure that we are fully aware of what it is we're at least committing to, and making a conscious decision about it before we plant those seeds. And perspective. So knowing where Algol and the late Taurus is in your chart, what the areas that this perspective is being brought out in your own internal mental process and your thinking, and how it's related, and how it's related directly to the larger destruction of the establishment, the economy, the governments, maybe a larger family structure. It really depends on where Capricorn is for you as well. So these things are propping each other up and are a foundation in terms of earth-based elements, right? This is Earth, Capricorn, and Taurus. Mercury is the only or Hermes was the only deity that could move into the underworld and back out. The idea of the consciousness doesn't die, but does descend and then come back through into new form. And so thinking about that in terms of this trine, I think could really, again, offer some perspective as we're doing this really deep review, I think, internally, and having to go through the visceral process of this Pluto retrograde in terms of Capricorn. So, I mean, we really do have until 2024 when Pluto finally comes into Aquarius permanently. And it comes into Aquarius in 2023 and retrogrades back into Capricorn. So we still have another, year and a half or so as Pluto just every thread, my friends, guys, every thread will be unearthed. It's just part of the process. So perspective about it now, right here in our mind, and when it comes to the nature of our security and the nature of the fertile ground is really is such a blessing right now. Now, let's see what else. There's just a lot of these lines here that seem to be relevant. So the moon is in Taurus on tomorrow Saturday, the 28th. And like I said, it's going to conjunct Uranus. It's going to conjunct the North Node. So Uranus has moved into 16 to 17 degrees of Taurus. Now, there's a really good story that explains this Sabian symbol. So the Sabian symbol itself is a battle between the swords and the torches, right? So you break that down in terms of the swords and the wands and the tarot, and you're looking at the mind or the ego consciousness, the analytical part of ourselves, our conceptual capacity, and our spirit, right? And not so much spirit in the experience of our feeling spirit, like a cups or the water, but the fire, right? The fire. And when we have this new moon in Gemini that's conjunct Aldebaran, you can't talk about, well, you can, but you can't talk about Aldebaran without talking about the star Antares, because it's exactly opposite from Aldebaran in the zodiac. So, or in the zodiacal framework, right? And so we'll talk about that too. And Antares is the heart of the Scorpion. It is in Sagittarius. It's in Sagittarius. And it is Archangel Uriel, right? The fire of God. So the reason I bring that up is because the swords and the torches, the ego consciousness, the mind, and the spiritual will, right? It all kind of comes down to this. So there's actually two stories that really represent this particular degree, 17 degrees Taurus. Now this is where Uranus is. The moon meets Uranus at this degree. The one story is in the Bhagavad Gita, right? It is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, right? It's where Arjuna in the chariot is facing the battlefield and realizing he's got to fight his own family members because there's been this, huge falling out and dispute over power. And he's like, I'm not doing this, right? I'm going to walk away. If you're familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, then you know the story. And if not, here's the Cliff Notes. His chariot driver is Krishna, I don't want to say incarnate, but is, it's a walk-in. Perhaps it's a walk-in. Perhaps he's been acting as the chariot driver the whole time because he has been guiding, right, Arjuna through the process of fulfilling his destiny. And what Krishna says is, whether you do or you don't, it's going to happen. So fulfill your responsibility, right? There's only two choices, and you have to make the choice now, in the now moment. Everything is distilled down to this one polarization of values, okay? The other story is the Buddha, right? Siddhartha, when he leaves the life of being a prince and being very wealthy, and he's going through all these, various pathways to get to a sense of enlightenment or awakening to what it's all about. And he follows the Brahmins, and then he's like, that's too formulaic in the caste system. And he follows the ascetics, and it's like these people are starving themselves to death. Like, this isn't working for me either. And eventually, everything outside of him that is failing him, he eventually has to just go sit under the tree and fight the battle within. right? And that's where the awakening comes from. I would say you could even say that the story of Usui, Mikao Usui, right? The founder of the Reiki system that we use, right? Kind of the same thing and pretty dramatic, that he just could not get to this place of awakening enlightenment. So he just went up to the mountain to die, right? And that's when he received the Reiki symbols, right? And that's when it all happened. But it wasn't like an intentional, I'm going to go up there and fast. They tell you that, but the real reason is that he gave up. He said, fuck it. Oftentimes it's in that moment of absolute surrender that things are, that we create the space. And Pluto and Scorpio in particular is a big part of this. I'm going to, bring these opportunities for us, in the way that Uranus does, which is shock and awe and something that is that is a surprise, or you can't expect it, and is innovative, right? It is something that is in reference to the larger social bandwidth and the collective consciousness, not the individual mind. So when the moon meets Uranus and then meets the North Node on Saturday, early Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, I would say, you're going to see that. And then beyond, it's going to just be this emotional connection to what this means. And so sometimes when the moon meets Uranus, there can be some aggravation with our emotions. It can seem, that we can't settle down emotionally. In Taurus, that could even be more amplified because we really want to be settled into into our space, or a comfortable space, or whatever Taurus represents for us, in our senses and in our own sense of groundedness. And so Uranus certainly can upset that with the moon involved, and especially in Taurus. So there can be some upsets and some really aggravated and frustrating emotions of just I don't want to, I want to just be comfortable. I don't want to have to sit. You know what I mean? Most of us, avoid this work because of having to face the reality and the discomfort of the situation. So this, I think, in its own way is going to be hey, if you're not going to do it yourself, then at least Uranus is going to flip things around, so you kind of have to. And then you meet the North Node, the moon meets her own North Node, and she's okay, well, at least I am able to tap into the soul's direction right now in terms of learning and evolution, which is really just to allow the natural process of value to accumulate, and that we certify it, right? We're not creating it. That is Scorpio. That is our banking system, dying as we speak, right? And we've talked about this for a long time with the nodes moving into Taurus and Scorpio, being the time of the, especially with Pluto and Capricorn being the time of the fall of the central banking system and the Babylonian money magic, right? Now we are learning what it means to value what is naturally accumulated, and for all of the frustration with the moon and Uranus, I feel that the connection to the North Node or Rahu at that moment will at least be okay, well, at least I see now, or feel, or have a sense of, oh, okay, this is where it's headed. And you won't really get to a point necessarily of identifying what is naturally worthy unless you have to be distilled down in some ways to the very essence of your own battle within. So I would, those things are just going to be the types of themes coming up. So when we come into Sunday, the 29th, we're leading up, our moon is getting very balsamic now because it's going to cross the point of the eclipse. Mars is going to meet Jupiter on the 29th, and the moon's going to be at its darkest coming into the new moon. Too many windows open. And the moon meets Mercury at Algol, right? This is the Pleiades. This is also in conjunction to Algol. Mercury is still retrograde, right? So these two are crossing over the eclipse moment too, right? These two are conjuncting at the point of the lunar eclipse, and they are both in a trine still with Pluto. So at least at this moment with the moon meeting Mercury, our emotions can find a sense of adjustment and serenity, and even release through this very deep introspection with Mercury retrograde at this moment to just be like, oh, okay, just to peacefully and gracefully release emotionally. It may not be nearly as eruptive as the eclipse was in terms of the emotions, but maybe much more just, I feel like another like shock wave could come through this particular moment here on Sunday morning, but in a way that's really like I said, peaceful, possibly more comfortable, less, and I can't say for sure. I just get this sense that now with Mercury retrograde here, if you had a really big release with the eclipse, like I did, that this will just be like, I see now, like I get it, and there may be what we'll find is an expansion now that there has been space already created through this torrent. And we did talk about this. Remember when Mars and Neptune came together at the in that conjunction at 25 degrees Pisces, right? And it was just like, here's the torrent. It came through the eclipse. I mean, no doubt, it came through the eclipse. I feel it. And it came through each one of us in our own way, because we are talking about Pisces, so that's like everybody's feels. So we have that going on. The moon meeting Mercury retrograde on Sunday. We have also Lilith has now moved into Cancer, by the way. So on Sunday, Black Moon Lilith comes into conjunction with 0 degrees Cancer. So again, this is our solstice point. So a deep connection here to where we are going to plant our root system, right? This is a point of no return, 0 degrees Cancer. You have raised the flag and you've planted it and you've raised it. And this is what you're going with, much like when the plant finally establishes root systems after it gets enough growth as a seedling, right? You get a couple of leaves, and then I feel like when the plant has gotten the signal that there is the means to continue growing, that's when the roots go down and you're not moving from there, right? And so this is home and family of origin. This is your country, your home, your traditions and customs as a family, lots of these Cancerian elements. And the Chariot is the Cancer card in the tarot, which I actually did pull this morning as part of my personal practice and reading. So it's deeper, right? It's deeper than our own feels attached to this, but it's still very much there. And it's in a it's in a sextile to Venus at 0 degrees of Taurus on Sunday. So this is also, this unadulterated, and they never come into an exact, well, maybe they do. I feel like they do come into an exact sextile, and it's very much at, like I said, this pure, uncontaminated, the Empress coming home, right? The Empress returning to her kingdom of Venus and Taurus, and Black Moon Lilith, establishing at a deeper esoteric or occult level, or an occult just being hidden, right? The inner experience and the energetic spiritual experience, setting down the root system in a way that the Empress can, just be herself in her own territory. So I get this confidence vibe, that Queen of Keys. If you remember the Starseed Ministry reading from Monday, this Queen of Keys, I'm getting a real strong vibe now that reading really was taking us up to this point. And we'll see how Monday's reading unfolds for us. But Sunday, I get this confidence vibe. I get this sense of like, okay, this is, we are starting to deeply at a human level, right, at the planetary grid level, kind of establishing, okay, this is where we belong. And it allows us at a sense-based level, a material level with Venus, to just, to just flow within who we are and in the world around us, to feel completely at one with that situation. So Mars conjuncts Jupiter, I already talked about that. There's the moon conjunct Mercury, it's going to trine Pluto, and then the moon comes into Gemini. And the first thing it really does before coming into the new moon is that it is going to sextile both Mars and Jupiter in Aries. So if we were to go ahead to midday, here with the moon having that sextile in Gemini with both Mars and Jupiter still within the same whole degree of each other. Mercury is still retrograde. It's not stationing quite yet. Lilith is now moving into Cancer. 4 degrees of Gemini is where Mercury stationed retrograde to begin with, right? And so, again, there's this overlap here of the shadow of Mercury's retrograde, 3 to 4 degrees of Gemini. And this is, again, these 4s represent, the square, the stable structure of form and materiality. And in Gemini, what's very interesting about this is that for as much as Gemini is about the realm of mind and the flow of ideas, communication, thinking, concepts, and the dialectic, right? Working with the dialectic. For all of that, there is, in its true material form, there's a sense of returning back to some traditionally based archetypes in the process of discovery, right? So you come around, you make the 3, right? You make the 3 left turns and return back to where you came, because it's important not to forget that place that you came from, which was the Kazemi in a lot of ways. 0 degrees of Gemini is the glass bottom boat, where the translucent mind gets access to the full unconscious. So, and then from there you start to actually make discoveries throughout that realm. And this degree of Gemini, 3 to 4 degrees of Gemini, is really relying on it, turning back to some sort of source-based code, whatever that is for you, as we are discovering. And this mile here between these two, right, coming up to the new moon, is the last real lunar transit of the balsamic moon before the new moon position. And remember, we talked about it's not a closed loop, but it's the repolarization of the individual in relationship dynamically to the world around, but not with anything other than itself, right? The seed is going through its own process of starting to activate and catalyze and start to become viable. And there's something there that we have to, I think, that is worth connecting into within our own fields, within our own subconscious. Maybe it comes through the dream state. Maybe it just comes into a more intuitive sense of the rational world, to return back to something. And I think it has a lot to do with returning back to this process that Jupiter and Mars are representing in Aries, of this becoming like a little child. It's like the repolarization of it. And that's actually where Chiron is at 16 degrees Aries. It really does represent the importance of coming back into that innocence and attuning to nature, more than trying to allow the ego to keep pushing forward. So if you need a place for your ego to keep pushing forward, go on the walk in the woods with your beloved, and literally or not, right? You can just think about that in terms of your own internal process and know that there's a lot of action and push and resource and meaning that is there for your process, and to not, let go of this pre-intellectual state that truly is coming from Aries. Basically, right? It's an experience of the fire within, the charge, the spark of life that is truly the basis of it all, not Gemini, although, there are many who do believe that the realm of the mind and empirical materialism and a sense of knowledge acquisition is where it all starts. And the astrological calendar starts, and this is where the vernal equinox is at Aries right now. And so every time, the wobble of the Earth on its axis is like a degree every 73 years. This is called the precession of the equinoxes. It's a 26,000-year cycle. So currently, the vernal equinox is, where we are in Aries. And so that'll change over time as the precession continues. So anyway, again, I'm going to go over a lot of this type of stuff in the Catalyst classroom that's coming up. So, but I think that to not lose to not lose within ourselves and in our feelings and our emotional landscape, not lose that pre-intellectual state of oneness with what is, but also a sense of autonomy, a sense of self-actualization, subjective experience, and the potency and desire to be, and allow that to be what we are working on with Jupiter and Mars. And of course, you got to know where Aries is in your chart to see how this is really going to be expressed in your own life. So really it takes us up to, like I said, the new moon. It's going to be on the 30th. If you go back an hour, it's going to be 7:30 roughly a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. This is Memorial Day here in the United States. I actually just thought about that, and I'm not going to be streaming the ministry on Monday because we're having a picnic here. And so it'll be Tuesday, and I believe I'll do the Catalyst Classroom on Tuesday evening too, as well, where we talk about this stuff. So, but Monday morning is the new moon at 9 to 10 degrees Gemini, and in conjunction with Aldebaran. And you can see that not only is the new moon happening, but Lilith is going to be in a direct square with not only Jupiter, but also Mars as well. And so keep in mind that the first couple of degrees of Cancer in general have to do with the adjustment to the decision that's been made, and still kind of, working with the dialectic of Gemini, but having to remain steadfastly anchored into some sort of character or position or sense of self, emotional self and character. And so there's going to be, with this new moon, there will be a sense of, we're working on these aspects within ourselves and are taking action, right? Expanding, right? Larger than life, understanding with Jupiter. And Lilith in Cancer like this is going to be okay, but this is what it's going to feel like at the human level here, deeply, to actually live with the decisions. Okay, so it's a bumpy ride, and we know that it's a bumpy ride. That's something that's not new to us, and it's not that we should keep feeding the fear aspect of the bumpy ride, but be aware of the ripples that are having an impact on our own ability to stay on our surfboard. So I'm gonna leave it there for this broadcast. So I'm just going to check in with the chat real quick. Emily says it would be interesting to look at my chart and see if that's when my Arcturian activation happened. That's interesting. The woman who channels for elemental beings is an Arcturian, uses amazing combo of Tibetan bowls. Who else channels the Arcturians is Daniel Scranton. I haven't listened to any of his content in a couple of months, but he was very direct in terms of his channeling, was Arcturian directly, so and consistently. So he's always been a really good resource for Arcturian channels. But Emily, I'll take a look at your chart and see what comes up in that realm. So a couple of promotional things that I just want to share real quick before we sign off from this report and we all go our separate ways for the weekend, or whenever you're watching this, is that I will accept bookings for the cultivation reading up till Monday. It's May to November. We're looking at the eclipse cycle and the general themes for you based on your astrological natal chart, your progress chart, and whatever starseed markings seem to be relevant for you. So that's a 90-minute recording. It's $99. And like I said, you go to catalystenergies.net. There will be an option to book right on the home screen, and then you can get this recording for this sale rate. And the other thing I want to show you is that I'm also still offering the lunar transit forecasts at a discount. So 30-minute recording or 60-minute recording, 33 or 66 USD respectively. Still able to book this too from catalystenergies.net, and it's a great way to get just kind of like a more concentrated insight into the lunar cycle itself, related to the same things: your chart, your natal chart, your progressions, whatever's relevant, and of course the starseed marking. So both of these you can book from catalystenergies.net. It's right there on the homepage and gives you instructions to do so. And yeah, we're going to have the ministry on Tuesday. We're going to have the Catalyst Classroom on Tuesday evening, where we talk about all of the starseed and mythological context of this new moon and all of the symbols represented by it, the Hyades starseeds, how that all fits into everything. And I have a chart that I'm going to use. I was given permission to use somebody's chart in particular to make some connections. And of course, if you're not subscribed here, you can subscribe by hitting the button, and you'll know when I upload the Gemini forecast for this new moon, which will be very soon. And of course, if you find this content helpful and valid and valuable, you hit that like button because it actually helps this channel grow. And thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Have a great weekend. Take very good care of yourselves. Take care of each other the best you can. I love you guys, and I will see you on Tuesday for the Starseed Ministry after our new moon in Gemini. Take care.